In a large auction room, a young man was introduced as the next hero, Tsukuru Sumeragi, whose job title is Cook, rank G. The auctioneer then announced that the bidding should commence, asking if there was anyone interested in the hero. As soon as the auctioneer said this, the audience started to shout out loud, saying that the job title is totally useless and that no one is offering to buy the hero. This made Tsukuru Sumeragi wonder about what he could have done wrong. At the cooking school, Tsukuru Sumeragi demonstrated his cooking skills, while Ichinose, a young girl, stood by, admiring his skills. Ichinose expressed her clumsiness, prompting the teacher to instruct her not to touch anything and to simply observe. At the time, the teacher informed the students that he was heading to the teacher's office for a while and that he wouldn't be long, telling them to be careful with the flames. At the time, Sumeragi was having a feeling that something was about to happen, and in that instant, everyone in the cooking class was teleported into a huge room, including Sumeragi himself, who wonders if what just happened is the infamous reincarnation into another world. All the students looked around themselves, wondering where they were. At the podium, a group of people introduced themselves as representatives of the United Kingdom and explained that their rituals were summoning the students, now known as the heroes, to this strange world. The students, otherwise known as heroes, could not believe what they had just heard. Meanwhile, the representative stated that they would begin to verify the status of these heroes, as well as determine which kingdom each of them would be in. Auctions will determine each hero's destination, delivering the summoned heroes to 9 kingdoms within the United Kingdom and 6 other countries, for a total of 15 countries. Their mission is to subdue the demon kings in each of these countries. During this time, the auction has already begun, and the audience has already started to bid for their desired heroes after checking out their job titles. When Ichinosi's turn came, they asked her to check the status plate, revealing her job title to be the Holy Maiden, a rank S skill. So, her initial price started at $5 million, at which point people began to bid, and it reached a staggering $44 million. Then it was Sumeragi's turn, whose job title turned out to be Cook, a rank G, which people totally disliked and were not interested in at all, as they could not see how a cooking skill can help to subjugate threats like demon kings. The auctioneer then informed Sumeragi that he was free to operate anywhere he desired, as they could not send him back to his original world. The sword, along with some money for transportation and survival fees, served as his compensation. The auctioneer also informed him that the transportation gate would take him to a randomly selected country. In other words, Sumeragi realized that none of the countries were willing to accept him. Meanwhile, Ichinose was concerned about him and asked if they would be able to meet again. The kingdom of Luke Sandel chose Ichinose, prompting Sumeragi to respond that, with luck, they might cross paths in the future, to which they both bid farewell. The auctioneer abruptly pushed Sumeragi back as he entered the teleportation gate, and he suddenly found himself in Bulf Forest. At that moment, he realized the auctioneer was deceiving him. Then he looked at the status plate, which contained his information and details. One of his culinary skills is detailed inspection, which he applied to a tree. He was able to gather clear and detailed information about the tree, even to the extent of confirming its unfitness for human consumption. He then decided to explore the area and discovered some shirameri mushrooms, which he found to be extremely delicious. This discovery pleased him, prompting him to store them all in his ingredient storage. He felt that things should be easy as long as he doesn't encounter any monsters. However, his fear was real as he was suddenly chased by a fierce monster, to which he forgot to take his sword along with him as he ran for his life, wondering if he had any weapons he could use as he checked his status plate, only to find mushrooms and berries. So he was attacked by the monster, to which he began to bleed as he fell down, thinking if that is how he is going to die, as he still wanted to take revenge on the auctioneer who tricked him into this forest, including the other guys from other countries. Sumeragi thought of his cooking skills, to which he used the Ignite skill, which set the monster ablaze and was getting hurt, and wanted to kill Sumeragi so as to put out the skill. Using another skill, Dismantle, he instantly dispatched the monster, scattering it into fragments. Sumeragi, then, had leveled up many times just after this single defeat. Shortly after sustaining severe wounds, Sumeragi lost consciousness. However, he later regained consciousness and used his newly acquired skills from defeating the monster to feed himself with water and healing food derived from the monster he had just killed. After consuming the healing food, he fully recovered from all his injuries. This gave him newfound hope that he could actually make it out of this dangerous and interesting forest. His new level is 123, and he has also acquired other new hero skills. Chapter 2. Sumeragi was secretly observing a level 200 skeleton monster known as the Sword Reaper. He knew that he could not rival such a high-level monster. Sumeragi found it more important to eat because he thought that there was nothing more important than having a meal. He thought back to the meal he had the day before, when the monster attack had seriously injured him, leaving him unable to taste any flavor. When he received a notification about new skills, he wondered if cooking had an effect like this. After trying out a steak, he realized that those new skills were real. He discovered that the skills he gains vary depending on the parts he cooks. The more monster meat he eats, the more power he gets, and if he is able to keep up this routine until he gets out of the forest, he is confident that he will be strong enough to blow all those who have tricked him. Sumeragi was able to use wood magic to create chopsticks and plates, which helped him eat the meat. However, he suddenly came across a pack of wolves, and he immediately used his water gun skills to attack them. He then realized that he could not kill all of them, even if he got down and fought them, as the wolves were too many. At the time, a huge monster, Hellbear level 210, appeared and attacked the wolves, devouring all of them. Then it sets its sights on Sumeragi, whom it charges at, howling. He immediately summoned the water gun at the Hellbear, and then used wood magic to summon tree branches to hinder the movements of the Hellbear, which he then followed up by using shadow binding to block all its movement. He then threw a stone at the monster, but it did not affect it. The Hellbear was so strong that it attacked Sumeragi, and then used its claws to pierce through him, resulting in a severe injury. At the time, Sumeragi was wondering how this is a normal student's life, although he desired revenge and wanted the representatives to experience all the pains he had suffered. He didn't want to end his life in this manner, so he chose to use the dismantle skill for a final attempt, resulting in the destruction of the Hellbear. He felt that he had to be more careful. Even if he had to eat to heal his wounds, he would be stronger with the food available to him. After defeating another monster, a new skill popped up on his status screen, and he was pleased, thinking that he had finally gotten a capable revenge skill. The new skill, known as the Pervert, targets those who don't care to conceal their vulnerabilities. Sumeragi checked the time spent in the forest, which turned out to be 1 month, 8 hours and 30 minutes. He had become stronger, and he began to wonder when he was going to get out of the forest. At the time, he only had a small cloth covering his waist, to which he felt cold and lonely. He looked around, wondering what he could wear, when he noticed the Sword Reaper again, and decided that it's time for him to face it since his level is high now. However, the Sword Reaper had already noticed him and used Transfer, a teleportation skill that enabled it to teleport up to 150 meters. But Sumeragi is already aware of this, so he summoned his shadow binding, but the Sword Reaper kept escaping. Sumeragi was eventually able to defeat it by using Dismantle, to which he got the Hermit's Coat of the Sword Reaper. Anyone wearing it is invisible to lower-level monsters, and it is also immune against tears or dirt, including all kinds of magic. An unknown sword suddenly attacked Sumeragi, questioning whether he was a true warrior. Chapter 3. As Sumeragi savored his steak, his attention was unexpectedly drawn to his status screen, which now displayed his impressive level, 210. Amidst the mundane act of dining, he found himself confronted by the extraordinary. His sword began to speak. The sentient blade expressed its admiration for Sumeragi's culinary prowess, noting that it had never encountered a cook quite like him. It hinted at the possibility of Sumeragi utilizing his culinary skills in unexpected ways, a notion that elicited a weary sigh from the young adventurer. Contemplating the absurdity of conversing with a sword rather than a fellow human, Sumeragi couldn't help but feel a sense of resignation. Undeterred by Sumeragi's apparent reluctance, the sword pressed on, questioning whether he was indeed a warrior worthy of wielding its powers. It probed his beliefs, asking if he held faith in a higher power. Sumeragi's response was one of skepticism. He confessed to harboring doubts about the existence of gods or saints, sentiments that had persisted even in this strange new world. However, he acknowledged the surreal nature of his circumstances, conceding that he might have been more resistant to accepting his reality if he didn't believe in the presence of some higher force. Sumeragi was called into this world against his will, and was then thrown aside and forgotten, treated like nothing more than trash. It was a daily fight to stay alive, and luck was the only thing that kept them alive until the next dawn. His life was a delicate balance, and just getting food meant taking a chance with his very life. He had to deal with the harsh truth of his situation while fighting the harsh elements of the forest. He wasn't wearing the right clothes, so stones and twigs hurt him, and he couldn't sleep at night, which made his nights unbearable. Even though he was in pain, he couldn't help but wonder if his situation was fair. He blamed his bad luck on an absent and uncaring god. He felt like he was being abandoned and treated unfairly all the time, which made him angry and bitter. In his darkest moments, he thought about violence against the divine. He wanted to take out his anger on the thing he believed caused his pain. In a strange turn of events, the sword Kurokiri brought Sumeragi some comfort during her trouble. The sword promised to always be there for Sumeragi, even though he wanted revenge. It showed how interesting Sumeragi's character was. By urging him to hold on to the hilt, the sword asked him to imagine a blade that spoke to him. Feeling a strong need to do something, Sumeragi grabbed the sword's handle and put all of his deepest wishes into its shape. A new weapon appeared at that very moment. It was his thirst for revenge and was called the Death Sword, Kurokiri. As Sumeragi sought guidance from Kurokiri regarding nearby human settlements, he was met with a startling revelation. The sword disclosed that they were deep within the heart of the Bol Forest, deliberately traversed by Sumeragi in pursuit of a singular goal: to confront and defeat the legendary monster reigning over the domain, the Emperor Dragon, boasting an intimidating level of 300. The gravity of the situation dawned upon Sumeragi as he stood face to face with the monstrous embodiment of his quest. Towering before him, the Emperor Dragon loomed large, a formidable adversary unlike any creature he had encountered thus far. Overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the challenge ahead, Sumeragi found himself grappling with uncertainty, questioning his ability to overcome such a formidable foe. Despite his lack of experience in swordsmanship, Sumeragi steeled himself for the imminent battle. However, before he could even attempt to wield his newfound weapon, the Emperor Dragon unleashed a devastating breath attack, sending Sumeragi crashing to the ground in a daze. Amidst the chaos and confusion, Kurokiri's voice pierced through the haze, calling out to Sumeragi and urging him to summon his strength. Sumeragi was desperately trying to get away from the Emperor Dragon, so he took advantage of a brief break to eat some food that would help him feel better. Even though he had doubts about his own skills, he decided to run away because he thought he couldn't handle such a strong enemy. With a rush of dark magic, he tried to hide himself in the dragon's shadow to get away from its relentless chase. To his disappointment, he found that his efforts were in vain, as the horrible thing kept hunting him down with no signs of giving up. In a moment of grim awareness, Kurokiri told the truth. Once caught, no one had ever been able to get away from the Emperor Dragon. Sumeragi realized how bad his situation was when he realized that running would not help. When Sumeragi realized that he was going to have to fight the dragon, he decided to use all of his skills in one last, desperate attempt. He tried to avoid the creature's gaze by using his ability to remove presence. His attempts to hide were unsuccessful though, as the dragon kept chasing after him, apparently able to see him through his disguises. In an effort to save himself, Kurokiri revealed the fatal flaw in Sumeragi's plan. His continued desire to kill had revealed his presence, making his hiding useless. What Sumeragi did when he realized this changed him deeply. He used the fabricate skill to turn his purpose into a force of love. Together with his newfound drive, Sumeragi closed the gap between himself and the Emperor Dragon and launched a series of attacks that were powered by his unwavering resolve. With each blow, he put all of his love into the attack. By sheer force of will, he beat the monster and ended its reign of terror. Chapter 4. Sumeragi stumbled upon a mysterious gacha machine, seemingly designed to aid adventurers in their quest to defeat the forest boss. Curiosity piqued, and he decided to give it a try, especially with monsters lurking nearby. With a twist of fate, he received a black orb from the machine, accompanied by an announcement proclaiming the bestowal of an ability called Equivalent Exchange. Intrigued by this unique skill, Sumeragi sought more, prompting his companion Kurokiri to explain its rarity compared to typical skills. However, thirsting for greater power, Sumeragi expressed his desire for additional skills. Kurokiri soberly informed him that he would need to vanquish the forest boss first, then patiently await the gacha machine's reappearance for another chance. Undeterred, Sumeragi valiantly battled through hordes of monsters, honing his skills and gaining new ones along the way. With his confidence bolstered and his arsenal expanded, he deemed it time to depart the perilous forest. Yet, amidst the excitement of his impending departure, Kurokiri gently reminded him of the necessity of acquiring new attire. Resourceful as ever, Sumeragi fashioned himself a makeshift outfit using pelts and furs harvested from the defeated monsters, crafting what could only be described as an isekai suit, a garment befitting his adventures in this fantastical realm. As Sumeragi came out of the bush, he came across a disturbing scene: a group of thieves attacking innocent travelers. Initially, he attempted to avoid detection, knowing that encountering such a person could potentially lead to trouble. However, his plans failed when the princess unexpectedly found him, pleading with him to intervene and rescue the tourists in danger. Sumeragi was surprised by how well the princess could see things, so he couldn't say no to her request. With more determination in his heart, he went up to the thieves and quickly killed each one. Even though what he did was very bad, he stayed determined because he felt it was his job to do what was right. Kurokiri, Sumeragi's loyal friend, couldn't help but ask about the cost of killing someone when he saw Sumeragi act decisively. Sumeragi thought about how easily he had killed the thieves and struggled with the weight of his actions, wondering what his newfound powers meant for him morally. As the dust cleared and the danger went away, the travelers who had been saved thanked Sumeragi. But he didn't say anything because the terrible things he had done recently were taking over his mind. He continued his trip with a heavy heart, leaving the place where he had fought with the thieves behind. Over time, Sumeragi made it to the busy town of Alegria. Seeing all the people and what appeared to be a routine made him feel relieved. He announced to the sound of a deep breath that he was going to live a normal life, trying to find comfort and meaning in Alegria's busy streets. Chapter 5. A man listening to a group of beastkins discussing how Sumeragi had saved them, even comparing him to a hero, noted that Sumeragi seemed like a nice person and expressed hope for a meeting with him in the future. The market saw Sumeragi purchasing some ingredients for 850 gold coins, which he stored in his item box. He then said that all the ingredients look good, but the weapons are not that good, and Kurokiri remarks that it's the best sword. Sumeragi's thoughts turned to food, prompting him to inquire about the availability of rice in the market. The response was that it's likely to be rare, but there's a possibility he could find it at the Seidel General Store. Upon entering the store, a beast girl welcomed him with open arms. He blushed due to the fact that he had not spoken to anyone for a long time, to which Kurokiri suggested that he buy the beast girl since she is a slave, due to the appearance of the collar at her neck. Meanwhile, he refused and then asked about the rice, which was brought to the place where the rice is stored. He discovered that there are different types of rice. He checked them out and bought 10 bags for 60,000 gold. He encountered Seidel, the owner of a local store, who approached him with a friendly greeting. Seidel's interest was piqued by Sumeragi's sizable purchase, prompting him to introduce himself and inquire about Sumeragi's familiarity with the store. Sumeragi revealed that he had only recently arrived in the city, having made the purchase the day before. Curious about Sumeragi's arrangements for transporting his goods, Seidel inquired about an inn or a wagon. However, Sumeragi surprised him by explaining that he had no need for such conveniences, as he possessed the ability to store items directly in his item box, much to the amazement of Seidel and the Beast Girl accompanying him. Seidel then seized the opportunity to showcase his wares, ranging from food to slaves, a concept that left Sumeragi visibly taken aback. Despite his initial reluctance, Seidel persisted, urging Sumeragi to consider examining the various slaves on offer. Among the slaves presented, Seidel drew Sumeragi's attention to a lone slave girl, recently arrived and rumored to possess magical abilities. However, her presence in a noble's household had become the subject of controversy, as she was implicated in the tragic death of a child due to her proximity to the scene of the crime. Caught off guard by the gravity of the situation, Sumeragi found himself grappling with the moral implications of such a transaction. The encounter with Seidel had thrust him into a moral quandary, forcing him to confront the darker aspects of the society he now found himself immersed in. Seidel then explained that she and her father were close friends, but he had passed away 2 years ago. He'd known the girl since her birth, observing her unwavering kindness, and he'd learned that following her father's demise, she'd taken up residence in the noble's home, now facing a murder charge. Sumeragi found her situation to be quite similar to his. Seidel then pleaded that Sumeragi buy the girl Kana, but he refused because he did not want to involve others in his revenge plan. Seidel, on the other hand, adamantly threatened to execute Kana if Sumeragi failed to take her away. A young man named Dokkum rudely entered the store at that time, claiming he wanted to buy Kana. When Seidel refused to sell Kana to Dokkum, he glanced at Sumeragi, hoping he would buy her instead. Sumeragi then offered to buy Kana for 100 million gold, causing Dokkum to become extremely upset and insist that he would be the one to purchase her. However, Seidel countered by stating that Sumeragi was the first to offer to buy Kana, thus rejecting Dokkum's proposal. Sumeragi then told Seidel that he owed him one, and Seidel claimed that he would definitely pay him back for all the good Sumeragi did. Meanwhile, Seidel was pleased that his hunch proved to be right, and he is certain that Sumeragi can protect Kana. He thought about his dead friend, hoping he would rest in peace, as his daughter's future is bright and exciting. Chapter 6. Sumeragi was seen contemplating how he had spent all his money on doing Seidel a favor, only to be charged the full price, leaving him completely broke. Seidel even wanted to give him pictures of Kana and her father for free, but he totally refused them. He had intended to leave the town as soon as possible, and once he had prepared everything he needed, it looks like he may have to change his plans, but first he needs some money. However, it's more important for him to let Kana rest until she feels well enough to start speaking, since she was asleep at the moment. Later, as Sumeragi prepared some medicinal food, Kana woke up. Thus, he lavished her with an abundance of food, realizing that, as a slave, she had not received much nourishment and was uncertain about the exact dietary habits of others in this world. However, Sumeragi stopped Kana as she was about to eat on the floor, instructing her to sit on a chair at the table and refrain from using her bare hands. She then began to use cutlery, and he noticed that her way of eating was quite elegant. After eating for a while, she began to cry, to which she added the name Dolce Sama. Sumeragi's medicinal food is working, resulting in the healing of her mind. Observing her depressed appearance, Sumeragi began to wonder what could have happened to her, leading to an increase in his hatred towards the nobles. At the time, he noticed the presence of 5 enemies around the place he was staying, and he was able to discreetly attack one of them and ask who sent them to deal with, since he thought that he was the target. However, the enemy informed him that they had received orders to kill Kana, the red-haired slave who was accompanying him. They received a substantial financial offer. Meanwhile, the enemy added that if he knew that he was fighting against someone like Sumeragi, he would never have taken the job. Sumeragi then knocked him out, and he discovered that they needed to leave the town a bit sooner than planned, as they had gotten themselves into a really troublesome situation. At the time, Kana had just woken up and looked out of the window. Chapter 7. Now that Sumeragi has found himself in the city, He knows that he has to keep himself clean, and he also makes sure to get some clothes that Kana will put on after she has had a proper bath. Since Kana was still sleeping, he thought of finding a way to prepare something for her to eat. Sumeragi could remember what has happened to Kana in the past, about how Dolce, a kind guy, has offered to help her since she lost her father. Suddenly, a ruffian attacked the Count's son, triggering an emergency broadcast, and before Kana could react, he found Dolce unconscious on the ground. However, after checking him, Kana discovered that his wounds were too deep for her to heal, and she even noticed that she couldn't stop the bleeding until Dolce died. The death pained Kana a lot, because she didn't wish that for him. Unfortunately, they mistook Kana for the person who killed Dolce. Despite her attempts to clarify her identity, they did not listen. Instead, they framed her as the person they saw killing Dolce, because they had no supporting evidence. Despite the circumstances, Kana was able to convince them that she was innocent of the allegiance they had pledged. While they were still dragging the issue with her, she was captured, and so that was how Sumeragi found her, and since then, he has been helping her. By the time she woke up, Sumeragi had already prepared her what she would eat, but she did not like the food that Sumeragi had prepared for her, and so Sumeragi decided to have his food back, as he still made her understand that she had to eat no matter what, because they were going to be sold soon, and it would definitely take a matter of time before they could go to the mines. Kana was already fed up with the whole situation, so she wondered why everything was just happening to her at that point in time. She thought about what she could have done wrong that made her receive such treatment. However, Sumeragi was treating her well despite the odds. She assumed he was her new master, so she decided to be obedient. Despite the fact that she was not hungry, she still had to eat the food Sumeragi had prepared by all means. While she ate, she used every moment to remember Dolce, and that made her feel emotional, but Sumeragi did console her. Whereas Sumeragi was even worried about the loading fee because he hasn't solved it yet, he wants to make Kana happy, as he tried to cheer her up, telling her how much the portion of food he cooked for her is, and that she can eat as much as she wants. In fact, Sumeragi did not even know if Kana was a human being or something else, but he was all about helping her recover so she could become more lively. Then he asked her if she enjoyed the food, and Kana, who had no choice, also replied joyfully that she did. After a while, she fell asleep, and in no time, some things started growing on her skin, which shows that she has an allergy to the food she ate. At first, Sumeragi was filled with fear and shock, questioning the significance of the growth on her skin. Chapter 9. The next day, immediately after Kana and Sumeragi left for Dengaro's place, Seidel helped Sumeragi go to the Advertisers Guild to complete all preparations for onigiri. The next day, Seidel explained to Sumeragi the price of onigiri, which would be 10,000 gold pieces for a single piece. Initially, they had a contract to produce 100 pieces per day for a month, but Seidel was confident they could increase this production rate, given the rarity of status-increasing food. All of a sudden, after Seidel explained every single step behind how they were going to go about it, it shocked Seidel that Sumeragi would say he was no longer interested in it, as he did not need money anymore. He then recounted the events at Dengaro's house and described how he had received a short sword to track down the murderer, and he has been told the reward he would receive if he completed the mission successfully is 5 million gold pieces in advance, and so when he finds the culprit, they will reward him further in multiple ways. Assuming responsibility for the mission, Sumeragi pondered Kana's fate in the event of identifying the true culprit, to which he received the assurance of her release if proven innocent. Meanwhile, Altalias could not wait to have Kana back in their home because she really believed her so much. And since Dengaro said if she is found innocent, then she can continue working in their house. After Sumeragi explained all of this to Seidel, they realized that leaving the city would undoubtedly put Kana in danger, so they had to carefully consider their mission. Sumeragi did not want the kind of life that Kana would live. He wanted the fact that they would all be able to freely go in and out of Dengaro's house. Then, the only solution for them is to save Kana. So Seidel commits it all to Sumeragi's hand, hoping he will do his best to save Kana at all costs. Sumeragi knew that no matter the circumstances, there are still some people who believe in Kana and that she did not kill anyone. Therefore, he would not want her to be the target of someone's revenge. Nonetheless, he is determined to resolve the incident and then leave her peacefully behind in that town. The investigation must begin at Dengaro's mansion. We assigned Hana, one of the maids, to guide Sumeragi around the mansion. During this process, Sumeragi asked some of the guards about their whereabouts, hoping to have a conversation with one of them. That was when he found out that Rotten had gotten married with kids while they kept on walking. Fortunately, they stumbled upon a guy who didn't expect Sumeragi's presence. It was as if he was hiding something from him, and he got so angry just because he showed up where he was. The guy's anger and fury sparked a fight between them, leading Sumeragi to inflict a hand wound on him. This incident prompted Dokkum to report that Sumeragi had injured him. Dokkum anticipated Sumeragi's capture, but to his dismay, Rotten unexpectedly entered and chastised Dokkum for fighting their guest. The statement surprised Dokkum, as he had no prior knowledge of it. Therefore, he attempted to deceive Rotten by claiming that Sumeragi had initially attempted to fight him before deciding to guide himself, which ultimately resulted in him taking some hits. With what he has said, he hopes that he will be able to convince Rotten to punish Sumeragi. Despite how Dokkum made up that story, Rotten did not believe him yet, because he knew the kind of effect Sumeragi's blow would have had on Dokkum would have been more than what happened to Dokkum. Dokkum was still shocked, wondering why Rotten would not consider his own part of the story. Later on, after Dokkum had been captured in a room in order not to cause any harm again, Rotten went to beg Kana and Sumeragi for what happened and promised not to let such a thing repeat itself again. But then Kana felt like Rotten should not have begged her as well, since she is just a slave. Rather, Rotten only replied to her that he would try his best to restore Kana's honor, as he felt indebted to her. So Kana then noticed Sumeragi's presence and went to him, letting him know her own contribution to the mission as well. She offered to help him in any possible way she could. Chapter 10. Sumeragi was seen investigating the death of the Count's son, and he talked about how they just half-heartedly wrote the report and blamed it on Kana. After reviewing the report, he inquired about the witness's identity and questioned the decision to leave the Count's son outside alone. He remarked that even a high schooler like him can see that this is worthless and that the cultural level of this world is too low. He knew that someone had clearly planned this, and it was someone with a certain amount of influence. He pondered the question of who stands to gain from the death of the Count's son. Not just the Abuse family, but potentially anyone aiming to gain his status or possessions. Additionally, the fact that they chose Kana out of all Abus's servants further heightened his suspicions. He remembered that, according to Seidel and Rotten, Kana was just an apprentice magician. Meanwhile, he made his way to Kana's room, where he encountered the maid. She asserted that the princess had instructed her to deliver tea and sweets to Kana, but chose to depart due to Sumeragi's presence. Sumeragi then approached the traumatized Kana, telling her that if she had been stronger, Dolchu would have never died because when she ran up to him, he was still alive, and that if it had been Dokkum or another capable magic user, they could have saved him. Recognizing her weakness, Sumeragi asked her if she wanted to become stronger, and in response he gave her a large amount of meat, and as she was eating them, she was able to obtain 2 magic skills. She then told Sumeragi that he should focus on the investigation, so he summoned a Lich Destroyer, which asked Sumeragi to bestow a name so that it could follow his commands. Sumeragi then named the destroyer Bais, causing it to become more ecstatic and consume more of Sumeragi's magic power. Bais responded by stating that it already knew what its master wanted and would be out searching, after which it left. Simultaneously, Sumeragi felt drained due to the excessive use of magic power. Shortly after, the princess came to check up on them as she felt a very dangerous presence, not knowing that it was the Lich Destroyer, and asked Sumeragi to address her as Ali, to which she said that she wanted to invite the 2 of them to some tea and cake in the garden. Soon after, they got to the garden, where they were served some tea, but Sumeragi discovered that the rim of his cup had been poisoned. Although it could not affect him, it could surely kill a normal person, and he wondered who did that. Meanwhile, Ali asked him about his investigation, to which he replied that he had talked to Rotten and also looked at the report, but it did not help him at all. Ali agreed as well, because the report does not include the testimony of the 4 people that came yesterday, and that her father, Rotten and Goliath, were not there that day, so they could not testify. However, she was certain that before Dolce was killed, she had heard him talk with someone, but the other person talked quietly, so she is certain of 2 things. The first is that it's a man, and she heard the sound of armor clanking. Shortly after Dolce's death, the situation turned chaotic. This revelation surprised Sumeragi, who claimed no one had previously informed him. Ali responded that she had informed the knights who were preparing the report, but they declined to record it, citing the impossibility of hearing through the thick door. Despite this, she was confident in her findings. Meanwhile, Sumeragi was silently observing the countenance of Ali and her personal maid, whom he called base and asked to investigate.